My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. And no question, we do continue to cover the latest developments here on the Israel-Iran conflict. I do want to take you out to this post here, just coming in from Trey Yingst over at Fox News. He has been on the ground following all of the latest developments here. He posted statement from Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei provided to Fox News by an Iranian official. Quote, "The armed forces will bring the vile regime to ruin. They will not escape unscathed from this crime. The Iranian nation can be assured there will be no negligence." Now, it's important to note that it appears he is talking about Israel, but hey, could be including the U.S. there, as we know that the U.S. did assist in shooting down some of the rockets, missiles that were fired by Iran over at Israel. Taking a live look here at just some of the latest details that are coming in. We know that Israel has confirmed that at least 3 people have died after 4 rounds of attacks from Iran. You're looking at a live image from one Israeli neighborhood decimated by rocket fire. And we know, as I mentioned, that the U.S. did help to shoot down some of those rockets, missiles, all of it. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations Security Council saying that Israel's attacks killed at least 78 people, including top commanders and nuclear scientists, while more than 300 others were injured. He told the Security Council that the overwhelming majority of victims were civilians, though, of course, there is dispute over the facts there that are coming in. Israel struck nuclear enrichment sites and a refinery, killing leading nuclear scientists. I believe the last number we had was 9 of them, according to the Israel Defense Forces. Now, Iran's ballistic missile arsenal was also targeted, and 3 of Iran's top military leaders were, quote unquote, eliminated. As you can see, they are speaking with some of the folks out there right now. Of course, we know that is not in English at this point, but if at any point we see that transition over to English, we will make sure to bring that to you. Also have live images right here over Tel Aviv at this hour. And I do want to bring in Jonathan Schanzer, the executive director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, to talk more about everything that is happening there right now. Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know you are working to stay safe there, along with the other folks there. So thank you again for being here.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
All right, so first off, I do want to ask you, I've spoken with many experts throughout the morning who are there in Israel, and I want to get your take on what the situation has been like there over the last 24 to 36 hours.
Sure. I mean, well, it started 3 in the morning here yesterday, where we were all, called out of bed, sirens were blaring, and we immediately went to shelter and found out that it was sort of a false alarm. What they were doing is basically saying we started this war, and they were waiting to see if there was an Iranian response. There was not one. But then, throughout the day and certainly into last night, we were forced into shelter multiple times. As you noted, there were 3 or 4 different pretty significant rounds of ballistic missile fire. There were a number of direct hits. I'm in Jerusalem. I didn't hear any of it. There was, at around 5:30 this morning, 1 interception in the skies over Jerusalem, but I don't think the missile was headed here. It looks like right now the Iranian regime is really trying to focus its fire on strategic military infrastructure in primarily, I think, the Tel Aviv area, although they, I think, are probably also trying to target a couple of air bases where the aircraft are taking off as they head east to strike Iranian targets. That has happened, over the course of several hours. That is typically happening at night. That's when the regime is able to pull its ballistic missiles out of their silos under the cover of darkness and fire them at Israel. But in the meantime, the Israelis are working around the clock, striking these military targets, striking these strategic targets, nuclear scientists, military officials. As you noted, a long list of them here. The Israelis are working 24/7. It doesn't matter whether it's dark or light out. This much we know. We're getting a lot of updates about ballistic missile silos, ballistic missile launchers. What the Israelis appear to be trying to do right now is just to minimize the regime's ability to fire at the state of Israel. And so even as the Iranian nuclear program remains their top priority because they're trying to neutralize all of the advances that the regime has made, I think there is now probably an equal concern about trying to protect the 10 million citizens of this tiny country some 1,000 miles away.
And on that same note, on the left-hand side of your screen, there are some of the quotes that have come in over the past several hours. You had Israel's defense minister saying, quote, "Tehran will burn if Iran fires more rockets." And then you also have the Israeli Air Force chief saying Israel, quote, "will continue to damage Iranian targets." So it seems as though, as you were kind of discussing there, there's no end in sight to this mission. The retaliatory attacks by Iran have not posed, I guess, any issue for Israel to say, look, we need to back off and stop this, right?
No, and I think the sense that I get here from what I'm picking up in the media and the folks that I've talked to is that there are very specific objectives in this mission. And I think if you start up at the top, it was to prevent an Iranian nuclear breakout, and I think the Israelis have likely succeeded in thwarting that, although there is still significant nuclear infrastructure that I think they're going to be hitting. And I think just about every major nuclear site has now been struck. Not all of them are sustaining major damage, but I think the Israelis are at this point trying to assess how much they can damage and set back these sites. And then on top of that, they're going for the senior leadership. This is about decapitation, and I think they're not done there either. Even though they've gotten a lot of the IRGC officials, they've got the nuclear scientists, they've got nuclear officials, they've got military officials. They've done a lot of that, but I think there are more. I'm sure they're hunting for more. And then again, ballistic missiles, the ballistic missile storage facilities. Launchers, by the way, are huge because they have to be put up on a launcher in order for those missiles to get over here in the first place. The more of those launchers that Israel can take out, the safer they're going to be. But I think really what we're watching right now is an attempt to defang the Islamic Republic of Iran on multiple levels. And, as I heard an Israeli official talk about, this was back in January, the idea is to change the trajectory. I mean, no less than changing the trajectory of the entire Middle East. The Israelis have long believed that a shadow has been cast over this country by Iran, that all of their proxies, many of those have been destroyed now. All of their military capabilities, many of those are being destroyed at this moment. They needed to get rid of all of that. I thought when I heard that some 3, 4, 5 months ago, that was sort of pie in the sky thinking. They are actually trying to follow through on this, and I think they're not likely to stop until they believe that they are safe and that maybe even the rest of the region is safe too.
One thing I did want to ask, and I'm not sure if you can provide any context on it, but a lot of people have asked, how do the militaries compare when you talk about Israel versus Iran? Is there a comparison that can be made when it comes to strength and other factors?
Well, I mean, I will say, the Iranians have capabilities, but up until recently, it was primarily asymmetric capabilities, right? They had Hamas and they had Hezbollah and the Houthis and Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, and they had rockets, mid-range, long-range, short-range, that they were able to fire at Israel, and they could kind of pin down the Israelis. It was suppressing fire almost. Now, that has all changed over the course of the last 600 plus days after the war erupted on October 7th of 2023. The Israelis eviscerated the vast majority of those proxies. Really, the only one that seems to have any firepower left are the Houthis out of Yemen. And even then, you don't see a lot of rockets or missiles, rather, coming out of Yemen. There is no air force in Iran. Whatever was left of it, the Israelis destroyed on the first day of these strikes. They still have ballistic missiles, and this is something that the Israelis don't really have. They don't have a missile corps. It's something that I think we're probably going to see the Israelis develop over time. They have these Jericho missiles. These are large, long-range missiles, but the Israelis have never, I don't think they've ever brought them out in wartime, at least not yet. So they're vastly different militaries, especially when you now look at what the Israelis are doing with their F-35s. They have U.S. platforms, advanced aircraft, advanced missile defense. They just, I think, right now seem to be a lot stronger. I think when you look at the disadvantage, though, for Israel, it's the size. This is a tiny, tiny country, smaller than the state of New Jersey. Iran is twice the size of the state of Texas. And so as the Iranians are trying to fend off these attacks, it's a little bit easier because the Israelis have to cover so much more ground, and it requires the Israelis not just to fire off a missile, but they have to send their aircraft and their pilots and possibly refueling planes and other aircraft that could maybe do electronic warfare. They have to do all of that. They've got to fly 1,000 miles away in order to do it. So there is a burden on the Israelis as they do this. But again, they're using U.S. platforms, advanced technologies, and I do think that at least as of right now, they have absolutely got the upper hand. Now that all can change in a hot minute here with one ballistic missile striking an important strategic target. And that's why what's happening at night, what happened last night in particular, is so important. These air defenses are critical for Israel.
I want to get your take on this statement here. Trey Yingst with Fox News, a statement from Iran's supreme leader provided to Fox, quote, "The armed forces will bring the vile regime to ruin. They will not escape unscathed from this crime. The Iranian nation can be assured there will be no negligence." What do you make of that?
Well, it's a lot of bluster. I mean, you had the supreme leader, as they call him, get up at his Friday sermon yesterday and vow to destroy the state of Israel. And as I was sort of joking on X, on formerly Twitter, it must be Friday. I mean, this is no different than the kind of rhetoric that the Iranian regime has been using when they talk about Israel. This has been going on since 1979. So I think we need to understand that when they talk about destroying Israel, it's kind of hard to take this more seriously than any of the other ways they've called for the state of Israel. I mean, heck, they have a clock in downtown Tehran that's supposed to be a countdown to the day that Israel is destroyed in the year 2040. This has been kind of a key pillar of the rhetoric of the Islamic Republic. And so I don't take this any more seriously than any of the rest of this. But I will say that cumulatively, when you look at that rhetoric that the regime has been spouting over time, plus the proxies, plus the what an apparent attempt to make a dash to a nuclear weapon. This is exactly why the Israelis have decided to act preemptively. That when the Israelis hear that the regime is hell-bent on their destruction, and they see the regime taking steps in order to try to actualize their vision, that's when the Israelis say, sorry, we're not going to succumb to this. We're not going to allow that to happen. And this explains, in essence, what the Israelis started a day and a half ago at 3 a.m. Local time. They just said enough was enough.
One thing you mentioned here, and I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but it did stick out to me because actually I hadn't heard it before, was this clock that you were talking about there, counting down, I believe you said, to 2040. What can you tell me about that? Because I know I hadn't heard about that, and it's possible maybe others haven't as well.
Sure. I mean, this is a clock. I don't remember exactly when they established this, but it's a landmark in Tehran, and it's part of the vision of the Islamic Republic that within the lifetime of most Iranians, they will see the destruction of what they call the Zionist entity. They will see the destruction of the state of Israel. And again, this is part of the propaganda that the regime has been putting out there. They talk about it all the time. This is the ideology that they imbue with their proxies. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, they all talk about the destruction of the state of Israel. They've tried in many ways to be the leaders of the Muslim world. And if and I think it's important to understand this, the Iranians represent their sect of Islam, the Shia in Islam. It's a 20% minority within the Muslim world. And they've sort of tried to lead the way on the destruction of Israel. Israel has actually just delivered a crippling blow to that narrative. And I think the rest of the Muslim world, the Arab world, they're watching right now. And I think they're beginning to understand that this was really not a good idea for the regime to push all their chips in the middle of the table and for them to try to pursue this vision of sorts. I think it's now blowing back on them, obviously, in a big way. They've sustained serious damage from Israel. And again, I get the sense that the Israelis are not done. They are trying to deliver a pretty stern message here right now. And I think that message is being received.
My last question for you here. Are there concerns as we look live at some of the damage to one Israeli neighborhood? We've seen scenes like this in different areas as a result of the 4 rounds of rocket fire there from Iran. Are there concerns about the aerial defense systems being overwhelmed by the situation that we've seen and what could happen in the future? Or is that just what you would expect, that not every different missile rocket can be intercepted?
Look, there is no system, and the Israelis say it here all the time. I've been watching all of the guidance from Home Front Command, from the IDF. They consistently reinforce no air defense system is hermetic. I will just note that the Arrow system, the Arrow missile defense system that the Israelis have, is actually, as I understand it, working at around 90%, which is excellent. And then there's the THAAD, which is the U.S. system that's been deployed. And that has been actually less effective. I understand that it's been like 60 or 70% effective. So the Israelis have terrific technology. You're buttressing that with the United States technology. There's a lot that's being shot down. But I think the important thing for folks to remember here, when you sort of look at the broader cadence of the war, and I think this is really important. The Israelis right now, while it's daylight, they are hunting for these missiles. They're hunting for the silos. They're hunting for the launchers. They are trying to destroy as many of those capabilities that Iran has as humanly possible. This will cut down on the need to deploy air defenses. It will lessen the likelihood of more missiles coming through. It is a numbers game right now, and I can't tell you what the numbers are. I don't think the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, I don't think they have provided those, and I certainly don't expect the Iranians to provide them either. But I think, I think the low-end estimate at the beginning of this round of hostilities was that the regime had something like 2,000 plus ballistic missiles in their arsenal. I understand that they probably popped off about 100, 150 of them last night, maybe more. I understand that there may have been some measures taken by the Israelis to ensure, maybe some cyber measures to ensure that there were some false launches. Those would have destroyed, let's say, another 50 or another 100. And then there's what the Israelis are knocking out on the ground. And I don't know how to quantify those. But my sense is that we're probably going to have several more days, more likely actually nights of this, where the Iranians are firing missiles. Israel's going to try to defend them. Israel will sustain damage along the lines of these photos that you're seeing right now on your screen. These things are inevitable. This is a war. Israel has sustained damage in the south of the country from Hamas. They've sustained damage to the north of the country from Hezbollah. They've sustained occasional damage from the Houthis when they fired their one-off ballistic missiles. But when you have these large barrages, that's when I think you're going to see more and more get through. For me, the big thing that I'm watching is, where do they get through? And here I think the Iranians are learning from their mistakes. You got to remember, these guys are not used to popping off ballistic missiles at the rate that they are. But as they're doing it, they're getting a representative sample. They're learning what's working and what's not. And so that's, I think, what's most frightening to Israelis right now, is that they're honing some of these skills. And with any luck, though, on the Israeli side, they're honing their air defense skills as well, and they're preparing for whatever is coming next. But that's the cadence of this war right now. But I do think it's worth pointing out here, Josh, that you have the Israelis, really going for very targeted. They're trying to hit things that are strategic, and they're being very precise with their weapons. I think on the Iranian side, you see a lot more, right? The photos that you've seen are homes that are being destroyed, apartment buildings that are being destroyed. You can tell by the numbers you mentioned early on that, there were 78 people killed in Iran over the last day and a half, and 340 something people injured. The vast majority of those have been at military sites. From what I understand last night, that the injuries that we had here in Israel, some 70 people, 3 killed. I've only heard right now 7 soldiers injured. Everybody else has been a civilian. So you get a sense of kind of the way that this war is being fought by both sides. Some of it may be about capability, but I think from the Iranian regime's perspective, when they talk about destroying an entire country, it certainly looks like intent.
All right, Jonathan Shanzer there at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies. Obviously, a lot to cover, so we just hit kind of a little of it. But thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Anything else you want to add? Anything we missed that you want to make sure to get out there?
The only thing I could maybe add to all of this is just the human element of what's going on here. Right before I came on air with you, I was watching a spokeswoman from the Home Front Command just trying to tell people to leave their homes, to go outside, to see some sunlight, to breathe some fresh air while things were still calm. And I do get the sense that they're trying to think about the psychological well-being of the 10 million people that are here that have really, they've had to stay so close to shelter or stay in shelter. There is obviously a lot of trauma here right now. And it's fascinating for me I've never been here during such a sustained attack of this nature. It's been fascinating to watch how the public here has adapted. They have been through a lot over the last 600 days. They're still going through a lot here now, but the morale here is really remarkable. And that's what's standing out to me at this moment.
Understandable. And Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And please, please stay safe out there.
Thanks a lot.